Hello, my name is Caleb Barton. I use he, she, and they pronouns, and I am here to talk to you about an issue negatively impacting the Black and brown, queer, transgender, and non-binary communities: substance use, but more specifically, opioid and meth use. Over the past few months in the Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia areas, the Black and brown, queer, transgender, and non-binary communities have experienced multiple different losses to substance use. Individuals directly and indirectly impacted by this issue all came together as a part of the National Trans Visibility Marches Community Advisory Board to create a campaign to raise awareness about this issue. Those individuals created a campaign titled Our People, Our Purpose. The message behind this campaign is meant to promote the necessary community that individuals need: family, chosen family, biological family that individuals need in order to make sure that they stay safe and understand the impacts of opioid and meth use. I was able to bring together these individuals to have a conversation about exactly what the campaign Our People, Our Purpose means. Let's take a look at this conversation. Hello there. Thank you so much for being with me today. How's everyone feeling?
I'm well, and yourself?
Feeling great, yeah.
Good. Please, by all means, give yourself an introduction. Regina, let's start with you. Who are you? Where you from? What do you do?
My name is Regina Livingston. I am the Executive Director of Unspoken Treasure Society. I am also a homeless shelter advocate for a homeless shelter here in Gainesville, Florida. And I also work for the University of Florida as a pediatrics patient advocate for the youth.
Okay. Monroe?
Hello, everyone. My name is Monroe Alice. I am a spiritual advisor, a connecting conversationalist, and a minister of substance, and a minister of circumstance. I also am the CEO of Can We Live LLC here in Washington, D.C.
Hey, last but not least, Jason.
Hello, I'm Jason Zhu Garson. I am also known as Undetectable Man, working with Prevention Access Campaign. I also started the initiative Take Down Tina, and I identify as a sex worker as well.
Yeah, and my house brother. Shout out to the House of Garcon. So thank you all so much for being here and being willing to share your stories and your experiences. I think that is very important and such a timely discussion, especially here in the Washington, D.C. area. We've lost in the past few months, it seems like multiple, well, it's definitely multiple, at least 3 individuals to substance use. And all of those individuals are young, Black, queer folks who are part of the ballroom community. So whenever I hear the phrase "our people, our purpose," it's something that I feel resonates really closely to me. But what does it mean to you all?
For me, it means my family. For me, it means a struggle that I fought. For me, it means my survival, my life. So it means a lot to me because I strive and I fight hard every day to remain here. And I fight for my people to follow.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. When I hear that, it's not a singular thing. It's not something that we can do individual. It's the collective. It is when you cry, I cry. What you struggle with, I struggle with. What you go through, I go through. And we can only fix this if we focus on fixing it together. And that's exactly what I hear when I hear that.
You have anything to add, Jason?
Yeah, for myself, when I think of, our people, our purpose is really just talking about our community, primarily Black and brown, queer people, especially trans people, non-binary people. And our purpose is really just going through and just doing the work and being active in, the work of either recovery or, harm reduction or drug use, whatever your narrative may be to get you to a place where, you're mitigating the risks, wherever you're comfortable at is your purpose. So yeah, just understanding that is what I understand from it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that about making it, very personal and whatever your purpose is. So I think a lot of the times people don't necessarily know where to start when it comes to doing advocacy or, this type of work or advocating around a specific issue. And I think it's so important for each individual to find their own purpose. Like everyone doesn't need to be in the same arena, right? We need queer and trans people running transportation services. We need queer and trans people, with access to housing. And so I also just wanted to help the audience understand exactly what is the general understanding in our community of what substance use is.
So for
I'll go ahead. Go ahead.
So for me, substance abuse is anything that is mind or mood altering, anything that takes you outside of yourself, and that is the definition for me. And and that could be anything from drugs or alcohol, in a variety of different things. And I think that is for me what that defines as substance abuse.
And I agree totally. Just to piggyback on what Elise said, I think it's mind altering substances that we put into our bodies for satisfaction that ends up hurting us in the end. So that's what I see it as.
Sorry. For myself, I subscribe to like substance use. And for me, it's just more of like understanding how we use these substances and understanding that, they're not to avoid a problem or to solve a problem, but they're to enjoy the moment, heighten what you already have naturally given to you by the universe, and to just have a great time, but be responsible while having a great time.
So do y'all think that our community has a stigma as it pertains to their understanding of substances or drugs?
Most definitely. Most
And how
definitely.
and if
Our
you could also
community,
talk about how that stigma manifests.
our community looks down on people who use drugs. That's automatically. They look down on them. And so therefore that leaves them like ostracized and amongst only people who use substances as well. And so that puts them in a position that makes them feel like they're solely going through their position. They're going through the situation that they're going through alone. So it can be a very lonely situation when you're going through substance abuse.
I definitely agree for it being definitely a lonely experience. For me, I believe that we shun those who have the public looks of what substance abuse is. I believe that we as a community in the LGBT community and as a whole, we live this public lie and these private truths of what I can see you doing or what has been manifested in the way that you look or the way that you represent yourself or the way that you conduct your business or what it appears like. So then I have the right to say that you're this or use that against you. But it's the things that are done in secret. It's the using in secret. It's the abusing in secret. It is those things that are being done, and then I was a person who shunned against that because I was the one that was abusing it.
Yeah, I feel for myself, I feel like there is a lot of stigma and shame when we talk about like drug use. I feel as though within our community, it is okay to use certain substances while other substances have like, more of a impact negatively on our community. I feel as though moving forward, we should actually remove that stigma and shame and really like understand that the process of actual drug use and responsible drug use can actually be done as a collective and not as just an individual, and really just enjoy a holistic experience.
So if we had the opportunity to shift the narrative on drug use in our community, what would that be? What would it look like?
Well, for me, speaking for me solely, in shifting the narrative is that there is always a recreational usage behind it. I know for me personally, it started recreationally. If I could be so honest about my situation, you know, my substance abuse started extremely recreational. It was the turn up, and I can't honestly tell you when it became medicinal. But what I can say is that a lot of the people that I know in personal life and people that I've came in contact with who suffers from substance abuse, it started recreational. It started as the Friday night turn up. It started as something to just take the edge off. And then it escalated, and then it became from recreational to medicinal. So the stigma for me, in which I would love to change the narrative, is that it is needed to have a recreational fun experience, that it is needed to be present in the body or in the room to be able to enjoy yourself. You don't need substances to enhance or motivate you to have a good time or free yourself or do any of those things. And that is just my personal experience. And that's what I know to be true for me and others who are substance free.
Yeah, I think for myself, it's just really like how we can really like change the narrative around like substance use. It's just one, like tackling the stigma and shame about it, and just understanding that, you know, it's okay to engage in drug use. It is just also just being responsible in that drug use. And by being responsible, we actually have to include harm reduction. I feel so many times that we, you know, have this narrative of just, you know, be sober, be sober, be sober, be sober. And we're not really meeting people where they're at and getting the narrative across to them, because some people just, that's just not what they want to do at that moment. So we have to have a toolbox full of, you know, things that can meet that person where they're at in that moment to possibly serve them to mitigate that risk.
I agree.
Now, I agree with you, Jason, on that. However, my problem with that, and I'm speaking from my experiences personally, sometimes people, when they ingest substances, they're not themselves. So then, therefore, they do things that's not themselves. And so this causes people to look at you differently. Because for myself, I know that I'm still fighting, you know, this battle daily right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that when I use a substance, I am not myself. So that's also part of it for some, not all. So
Yeah.
I do agree with you about taking the stigmas,
Absolutely.
but some of us really have to take a look and a hard look at ourselves, because we ingest those substances and then we turn it to different people, and then we do things that bring attention to ourselves, and that's why people look at us the way they do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
I'm speaking from I'm speaking from personal experiences.
Yeah.
Because I know me myself personally, the way I would carry myself and the way I would act would not be, you know, myself normally. So
Yeah.
I know I have to go I have to go that next level to control and make sure I myself am, you know, conducting.
Yeah. No, I completely understand what you're saying. And speaking for myself, like, it's just a lot of like work that I had to do on myself internally to actually get to a place to, like, you know, remove stigma and really be present in the moment, to where it's like I show up if I'm in a place where I am choosing to engage in substance, that I am my authentic self always. And I think that takes a lot of like shadow work and really like processing a lot of things to be able to move in that journey. But I completely understand what you're saying, because for some people that's just impossible. But this journey that we're kind of, well, what I'm kind of, you know, suggesting is for the people who are willing to do the work on themselves before engaging in substance use.
Okay.
Right.
So I appreciate this dialogue. It's very rich. And I just want to continue, I guess, digging a little bit deeper here. Now that everyone has willingly self-disclosed, what could you have benefited from when you were at one of your low moments? What did you need from others? What did you need support-wise when you were at your low moments dealing with substance use?
I'll be honest. I had a few people that stuck with me through those low moments. I had a few people that understood what I was going through and never turned their back on me. So that's exactly what I needed. Because without those few people, out of the people that I trusted and loved and thought would never turn their back on me, those few people are the reason I'm able to sit here tonight on this panel and tell my story. And I get emotional. I get emotional thinking about it, because if I didn't have those few people, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here. So that, for me, the few people who believed in me and who knew that I would come out of this and who stayed by my side through this is the people that I would have benefited from. Because without them, I wouldn't have been here. I still would have been.
Absolutely. That was so powerful. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. You know, I think it is definitely, for me, the people that was aligned in place to help me that have already traveled this road before me. I think that if I could really follow the trail of the trauma back to the reason why I started, because it was a numbing process for me. I started that journey of substance abuse to numb and run away from certain things, and you know, like the trail of my trauma. If I could really get gut level honest here, you know, with the hurt and abandonment and so many other emotional and traumatic things that took place, I think that if more mental wellness groups or, you know, information was disseminated, I think that if more people, like the people on the panel here, you know, were around at the time to explain to me that, you know, there are other ways to handle certain situations. There are other ways to cope and deal with and deal with the situation, you know, versus turning to something to numb or turning to something to help me remove myself from the situation. Because, you know, like she was saying, you know, I was the girl that became someone else, you know, once it happened. I did it to ease and numb and, you know, just relax. And then I became a whole Dr. Jekyll and Mrs. Hyde kind of situation. And then it became the excuse. Then it became the excuse. Girl, you know, I was turned up last night. It became that was the drug. You know, it was, you know, that ain't who I am. And then it became the excuse. But I was dealing with things. I was hiding from things. I was dealing with things. It was a whole ball of people pleasing and things, and just not knowing who I was and how to cope and deal with the situations that were taking place. And so it was those people that loved me when I didn't know what love looked like. It was those people that held me accountable and showed me what ownership and accountability looked like, and being able to be vulnerable and live in my truth authentically, no matter what it looked like, and practice that unconditional self-acceptance, regardless of the situation and the circumstance, but knowing that doesn't define me and who I am, because I've been through those things.
Yeah, I think for myself, when I would consider myself under the term, like, you know, an addict or recovering addict, I did have like people who were in my circle, you know, who were supporting me and showing me that love. But ultimately, I had to do the work myself. And through that process of actually doing the work myself, coming to this new point of just being like a drug user and really going on a different journey than, you know, recovery or harm reduction. Honestly, I mean, it is only for people who understand what I am like talking about. And I still engage with people who are in recovery. I talk to them a lot. They're really supportive of what I do, and I'm supportive of what they do. But we just understand that we walk two different paths, and that's understandable. I get it. I honor that. But right now, I have my therapist. You know, I'm really an advocate for therapy. And really doing that work within yourself and really understanding yourself. And when something comes about, like just talking it through and really understanding, okay, well, what can be better the next time, you know? So, yeah.
And I think no one understands you better than you.
Absolutely.
So when you're going through what you're going through, you are the only person that truly understands to your core. So you can't expect anybody else to know and understand what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with you, Jason.
Mm-hmm.
And I also agree with the fact that you can't go to someone who's never experienced drugs or addiction to get advice.
Mm-hmm.
Those are not the people that you need advice
from.
You need somebody who's been there, who's walked your walk and talked your talk and been there down in the gutter to talk to about your addiction. When you want to talk to somebody, that's who you need to talk to, not nobody who's never dealt with it.
Absolutely. And I completely agree 120%. And to take it further is, you have to talk to somebody who has not only been where you've been, but is in a place where you're trying to go. They are where you're trying to go. I can't talk to you about being being clean and staying sober if you ain't clean and sober. I can't talk to you about that. I can't talk to you about being a beautician if you don't know what a beautician look like. I can't talk to you about those things. And so you have to. I heard in several conversations before about placing yourself in the setting of people that you aspire to be like. Placing yourself in a setting or around people that are where you want to be. If you want to be a mogul, baby, you go hang with the moguls at. You go hang with the bosses at. You don't go down with the workers. You go up there with all the business transactions are being taken place. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's right. Y'all are on it. So I do not want y'all to go too far. I absolutely want y'all to stand by, and I want to bring you back later for a little bit more conversation. But thank you all so much for being vulnerable and adding your brilliance to this conversation today. I really appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
So my next guest will be talking about their experience being impacted by substance use. These individuals are folks who may not be directly impacted by substance use, but they feel maybe family or friends have been folks who have used substances. So if you can, please all join me in welcoming Aurora, Taylor, and Andrew. Hello there, beautiful people.
Hey.
How are y'all doing?
Doing well.
Good. So yeah, please absolutely introduce yourselves. The world would love to know who you are. We can start with Aurora.
Okay. Aurora Lloyd. I work in the field of ending youth homelessness alongside with the Way Home America, True Colors United, and Smile. And on the other side, I am also an independent recording artist.
Come on, recording artists. Make sure the people know that. Any music out right now folks can go grab?
Yeah, I mean, the EP is still out and doing phenomenally well. You could just Google Aurora Lloyd and it's going to pop right up. But yeah, album soon coming on its way.
I know that's right. All right, Taylor.
Hello, everybody. I am Taylor Chandler Walker. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am the transgender help coordinator for Us Helping Us in Washington, D.C., which is one of the longest running Black-led organizations fighting the HIV and AIDS epidemic, originally with Black men having sex with men. And now we've broadened it out to be inclusive of the Black community in general that's facing the epidemic. And recently I became the coordinator for Project Growth through DHS for workforce development of TGNC youth facing homelessness or...
You are working hard over there. Yes, Andrew.
Well, yeah, again, my name is Andrew Crawford. My pronouns are he, she, and they, and my current role is program coordinator for linkage, outreach, and engagement with the No for Juniper program in Northern Virginia.
Okay, so we've been talking about our people, our purpose today. So when y'all hear that phrase, what does that mean to you all?
I'll say, for me, I think our people, our purpose, for us, by us, getting to our future. That's what immediately comes to my mind, because it's very hard. It's already hard as a Black community to secure space that's only Black infested. But Black LGBT, it's even harder. So I believe it's about for us, by us, curating our own future that we want to see.
I would agree. It's definitely the community that looks, acts, likes the things that I like, cares about the things that I care about, and it's basically facing the same oppression that I'm facing.
For me, it's a little different, obviously, because I'm white, but I look at it as this is a community that I see no reason to not be a part of, that it's important for people that look like me to use their privilege to elevate Black voices and to make sure that, the people that are in power reinvest in the communities that need it the most. And, you know, I think that all combined, that's how we make change. And, it's ironic sometimes that I'm in the role that I'm in. But I always bring Black voices along with me. I can't tell somebody of color's story for them, but I might have access to a space that you wouldn't normally think that voice would be heard. And it's important to change that dynamic.
Yeah, yeah. I think I call those choice points. Those are choice points. Opportunities for folks to make choices to put in someone who may be better suited for that position. And I appreciate you for always taking those choice points and putting someone in that could better speak to that opportunity. So, if you all could just share, if you're willing to share, what is your connection to substances and drug use?
Uh, my connection, it's interesting because I think folks, or I think because of the way America puts laws around certain substances, we play around with what the word is and what really what's actually connected to it substance wise. Like as weed becomes more of a universal thing, it's starting to lose its negative connotations that it had from the 90s and all it and further back. And now it's becoming more of a like, oh, substance abuse. So you're not doing weed, you're doing like heroin or crack or coke or meth and all that. Like they start referring to the what's considered the harder drugs, substance, when ultimately all of it is a substance. And for me, I'll say what impacted me is probably just de- dealing with a lot of loss of family and friends from it. I don't even know how else to say that. Yeah.
I also would agree it's more so like indirect, dealing with family members and friends who have struggled and are struggling with addiction. Also working in the community with HIV prevention and just having clients dealing with, struggling with addiction and trying to maneuver resources for them. It becomes like, a little, it's like and I'm not gonna say overbearing, but it can be overwhelming because you're kind of taking on their personal issues and trying to help them maneuver things that you're not even struggling with.
For me, it started with my father. I was introduced to someone that was addicted to cocaine and alcohol most of my life growing up. Then he got clean and sober, and then he relapsed 18 years later. But the hardest part for me was um, my ex-husband, um, a beautiful, amazing Black soul. And he dealt with addiction that started from an injury and taking pain medication. And then it led to this and that. And eventually it led to him stealing from all of us in the family. And um, he eventually ended up in prison for Florida's 3-strike law, which, I mean, the last thing he did was steal a sandwich because he was hungry. And we had to do tough love because we weren't equipped to help him. While he was in prison, he did what he had to do to get drugs, and he contracted HIV. And he didn't take his medication like he should have, dealing with all of the homelessness and different things that were happening. And on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, he went to a service provider. They were closed for the holiday. He laid down under a tree. They found him the next morning and thought he was a homeless person sleeping. He had gone into a diabetic shock and passed away. And that was my real awakening to what substance abuse can do, and how someone that seemed so perfect and loving and warm and talented, when they weren't under the influence, could lose themselves and go to this place so dark that eventually they did things that cost them their life.
Yeah. Yeah, I thank you all for sharing and being vulnerable. I also my father, similar to you, Taylor, dealt with substance use, struggled with substance use, and yeah, there's plenty of stories that I have that I've been told actually because I was too young to really remember the brunt of it. But I can totally empathize with you, and I appreciate you just for sharing that. So I think one of the things that I have grappled with in my experience with family members and friends who have been dealing with substances is like not knowing exactly how and what to do when I feel they need support, or when they identify they need support. Um, and I'm certain I made a lot of mistakes that I can assess and hopefully do differently in the future. But if I could change, I would. But is there anything that you all did in your quest to try to support your family members or friends who were dealing with substance use or struggling with substance use that you may have regretted? What was that action, and what would you have done differently?
Man, this is oof. Okay, recently. So, last individual I had lost to a drug overdose. The last time I'd seen them, they were staying with us, and some things happened, and they kind of made the choice to want to leave and move out like sooner than like we agreed. Um, and part of the reason of them being with us was due to their drug addiction and working to uh, them getting clean. Yeah, we're trying to start, and it didn't go. It did. This particular day just went south so fast, so hard, and I I I checked out because I've been dealing with this person for years. I was like, I can't do this anymore. This isn't the first altercation, fight, argument, physical, non-physical. Like this. I'd reached a breaking point, and the last thing I told them about was like because they left and they hit me up and like I was asking like, so are we done? It's like, yeah. I was like, you kind of burnt the bridge, honey. I was like, but I wish you the best. And then no, for me, it was like a tough love thing that I was trying to do because I was like, this individual sometimes seemed to like learn a little slightly better if you didn't keep up with their bull sometimes. But they next thing you know, they passed. Like and actually the we found out and it was the day before they were supposed to had came past the house to talk. So I I hold a deep level of regret because I was like, oh God, I hope they didn't leave this earth thinking that I hated them or that I'm about to cry, that I hated them or that I didn't love them or care about them. Mm. So yeah, that's mine.
They know you love them, Aurora. Don't ever think that. You did what was best, and at some point it becomes their choice.
Um, so I would say my experience definitely comes, like I said, from friends and family. I can remember I have an uncle who I basically was raised around, who has struggled with drug addiction since I can remember, and it's currently in a mental institution because it's kind of messed with his mental so bad that he can't really be out in public and be functional. And then on to a close friend, someone that I consider a family member who is dealing with drug addiction, and it's kind of hard because you see this person as someone who inspires you to be who you are, and then they're dealing with something, and it's kind of like, how can I be there for you, and you were my inspiration. So what I would say that I probably would do differently is still try to be a little bit more strong-hearted for that person, because I can see that they are definitely in need.
For me, I knew before I married him was dealing with pain pills, and I thought I could fix him. And so I married him, and we moved cross country to Colorado. I thought if I got him out of his surroundings, it would change things. And I learned really quickly that someone that needs drugs will find them no matter where you put them. And he did. And, he ended up getting his sister to buy him a plane ticket to leave. And I knew when I put him on that plane to go home, he wasn't coming back. And the next time I saw him, he was in prison again. And I divorced him while he was in prison. And I don't feel like there's anything we could have done. His family loved him. I loved him. We still love him. He was just wrestling demons he did not know how to conquer. And unfortunately, he did not want help in the sense of professional help. And he hit bottom before he had that chance.
Is there anything that you have identified to be some positive facilitators, things that have been resources that have been helpful for folks experience or struggling with substance use?
Well, in my job now, it's a lot easier. As far as I don't come at it from a judgmental standpoint, I really do my best to meet them where they are and to provide resources that keep them safe while doing what they're going to do, not trying to stop it. We deal with a lot of people that are involved in recreational sex type situations. It's not always that person, behind a building down the street. And I think that there needs to be more resources for Black and Brown communities. I think part of the problem is people are making a fortune off putting liquor stores and all these temptations so everywhere, knowing that it's a community that's struggling with oppression and systemic racism. And then because they don't know how to deal with what they're dealing with, then here they are providing this temporary solution that oftentimes becomes a permanent fixture in someone's life. And, we just need to change how we value people in general and, make sure our resources are for everybody, not just a certain group.
That's it. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I second that because I honestly don't know. I don't honestly know. Especially when it comes to trying to figure out things that you have control over that you can offer and can do, because the orgs are great, but organizations, it's no secret that there's always like a fine line of how far they can go to help people. Mm-hmm. And it's not always on there. It's not their fault. Most of the nonprofit orgs, they have to follow a certain level of guidelines and things. So there's only but so much they can do. So I honestly, I don't know. And I'm beyond grateful for people like Monroe and other panelists that can speak towards how they got to where they got to. in the world that we live in right now, and with dealing with all of the urges and the temptations and the lack of resources to help them.
I want to thank you all so much for taking a little bit of time with me today, but I don't want you to go too far because I'm actually going to bring back my first guest. I want to welcome back Regina, Jason, and Monroe. All right, thank y'all so much for taking some time with me today. This has been a really, really rich dialogue, conversation. Y'all have poured into everyone, anyone who this touches. And I just want to honor each of you for your personal and collective story, struggles, and resilience that you all brought to this. So thank you all for that.
And I just want to say I love each and every one of you. I feel all of your struggles, and I promise, just know that someone is praying for you and all the struggles that we all go through. Someone's praying.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the same. I think you all are really brave for just being able to speak your truths. You know, you never know who you help with you being honest about your situation, and that's what it's about. This is how you change the narrative, by the individual honesty.
100%.
Well, it's first person conversation. We shouldn't define people by the things they do.
Mm-hmm.
You're Monroe, you're Aurora, you're Kayla. You are not the substance, you are not the addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we go wrong so often.
Mm-hmm.
That is a
Amen.
perfect segue, Taylor, because I think that was the issue that I'm grappling with quite a bit is just our community, the Black LGBTQ plus community, especially in the DMV area, has been losing so many people to substance use lately. And we still have these negative attitudes, I would say, and negative stigma that is associated with substance use and haven't necessarily changed our approach to that. We still see a lot of language that's very stigmatizing, a lot of attitudes that I can't even believe and fathom exist at this point. So I want to ask you all, what would it mean for the Black LGBTQ plus community to truly support each other through collective and individual struggle?
It would mean saving lives. There would be a lot of lives saved. It would mean unity, and it would mean change. It would mean change because the one thing that's the problem in our community is division.
Mm.
And coming together, we would make such a powerful impact on the world as a whole, just being one. Because one fist is always going to be more powerful than 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
One fist is all you need, and we can get through it together as a unit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would like to piggyback off of that. It's just like really like incorporating a lot of people from like recovery, harm reduction, and like drug use to really just like come together and understand that, hey, we might be on different journeys, but like really understand that, you know, we all have been in a space where we have occupied for us, and respecting the other's values and viewpoints and their purpose or whatever the case may be, and being able to move forward to, you know, unite in conversations like this to better, you know, our society, our communities. Because to be quite honest, you know, a lot of people are losing their lives to overdose. And if we're not, you know, showing up and being, you know, telling our stories and telling our truth and being authentic by doing that, more people will unfortunately die, you know? So it's really just really that way of is how we actually change the narrative and kind of move the needle forward on this subject, because it's a lot of stigma out there, and it's time to break it. It's time to really move forward and really just own, you know, who we are individually and collectively.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I just want to definitely piggyback on both of those things. You know, it's the united. It's in the unity that definitely changes. And I think the one thing that has to be present at all times in order for the narrative to fully change is honesty. You know, as I said earlier about the public lies and the private truth, you know, I use in private and I speak against it in public, or you know, I do one thing in public and do another in private. And it's in the being honest that this is what I'm dealing with. This is what I'm struggling with. This is what I've went through. This is what I've gone through. This is my journey. This is my process. And this is how it worked for me. It might not work for you, but this is how it worked for me. And you will have those people that say, well, let me try it that way. And oh, it does work that way. Okay, well, it didn't work for me that way, but Aurora said this, or Taylor said this, or you know, this is how we get through and change the narrative truly and honesty and honestly by being completely 120% authentic and honest in our stories.
I think it starts at the top. We need to vote out white supremacy. We need to stop white-led organizations giving crumbs to black-led organizations that are doing the work. We need to create a system where people aren't oppressed at this level, where they're seeking out that escape because they don't have opportunities. You know, our power is in the vote. Ending the stigma is ending the cause of the stigma, which plain and simple to me and what I see is white supremacy. Plain and simple.
I would agree. Just to say, we need more unity, more love, and less judgment and less stigma. I know oftentimes when we think about like drug usage, you know automatically say words like crackhead or you know things like that. To stop using those words and be more supportive and loving is definitely the change that is needed.
How do we create more opportunities for conversations like the one we had today?
By doing this.
Exactly.
By continuing this. This needs to be consistent. This doesn't need to be just because we're having the National Trans March. This needs to be consistent. We are dying out in these streets. Okay? So this needs to be constant. This is, my forum is going to go on forever.
Absolutely.
The drug addiction forum that I have, the Unspoken Treasure, is going to go on forever because it's not going to stop. So consistency in these messages that we're sending out and consistency for being there for these people.
Absolutely.
We have to be consistent in their lives. Consistent. That's key.
Any other thoughts?
I think we need to get bigger spaces to have this conversation. It to inject itself across racial lines. It needs to inject itself into that family in Idaho that thinks this doesn't affect them. I think people need to wake up and be real. You know, it's more than a hashtag to say end stigma. It's hard, you know, because we all come into it with our own personal biases. We may be able to talk openly about this, but then we're against that. You know, but the bottom line is when we're afraid to be able to talk and share our stories, we will continue to die. And if people are willing to listen and show that love and it be okay to say, hey, I'm not okay. I have mental illness. I have disorder. I cannot function like you because I am not healthy. That's how we end the stigma. That's how this conversation goes further. And it's, to me, it may affect this community in DC more than others, but it doesn't know racial lines. It doesn't know economics. It doesn't know, and it shouldn't take someone having to face it in their own family to want to help the people around them.
Yep.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
I feel as though for me, I think how we create these conversations is honestly just someone who has a different narrative and being a part of these spaces, allowing just different viewpoints and different, you know, thought processes to be a part of this, I think will really just be impactful moving forward. Because I mean, yes, we talk about recovery, and it's not to demonize recovery, because there is a place for recovery for people, but to just open up the forum to new ideas and new concepts that could meet people where they're at that moment. I think would be beneficial, because I feel as though sometimes we kind of just are just talking about one narrative, and really we should really just include all aspects for each individual who is a drug user.
And my last question for you all is, what is your hope for the future for your community?
My hope for the future is that we unite and we become inclusive with one another, and that my cis gay brothers can look at me as their equals, and that we can exist and coexist in the same environments, and that we all get the same respect possible. Those are my wishes.
My wish for the future is change. My wish for the future is definitely change. And a true awareness of self-awareness, and honesty and self-honesty, because I think that is where it starts at. I can't change the collective if I'm still not ready to acknowledge the individual. So I think that, a level of authentic self-awareness is my hope for the future.
Yeah, I think for myself, it's just more so just getting the narrative of drug users out there, so we can really decrease addiction moving forward. Having people being open and honest about being drug users, and really showing up as that, and showing that it probably does not create this negative impact that has been historically for others. I'm not saying that that's bad for those people, but just showing drug use in a different light, not to glorify it, but just a more understanding for moving forward, that we actually decrease addiction, so people are just not out here dying.
Equality for all, so that we don't need something to take us out of the world we live in. We don't need that escape, because quite frankly, when we have these conversations, I want that escape. But I don't know if I'd be on the other side and end up an addict, or I'd be able to control it. So I choose not to. But God, it seems appealing to want to take a ride and go somewhere where I don't feel the way I feel sometimes.
Andrew, Aurora, what is your hope for the future?
I think that I think that we would have better options, better, safer, healthier options for folks to choose from when they feel impacted or they're dealing with something traumatic. And honestly, and this may be wishful thinking, but to be honest, I kind of wish drug dealers were honest about what they're selling, because a lot of these kids don't have any clue what they're getting. So I really hope that they're honest about what they're selling, and they understand they're really explaining to them what it can do. Because it's one thing to hear it from someone on the outside who's just trying to be safe and protective of you, but it would be another thing if, and this is just wishful thinking, that the actual supplier would take ownership in trying to educate them on their drug of choice and how to use it safely and how to navigate through with it. I don't know if this is even a good idea to be saying on here, but that's because I feel like I fall on deaf ears sometimes. So I was like, well, maybe it comes along better from the person that they're getting it from. I don't know.
It's called harm reduction. So I support it. Andrew, your hope for the future?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was on. It was taking forever to be on me. My hope for the future is that we can just be more supportive of our community. As I said earlier, I think that we need more unity and more love. And that's something that I'm sure that we all struggle with because we all have our judgments and prejudgments of people sometimes. So just to be, like I said, less judgmental and more resourceful. I know that there are a lot of resources out here for people who are struggling with addiction. But there are a lot of resources that are also providing education for people who are struggling with addiction. And with that being said, I'm not going to tell someone to stop doing what you're doing, but I'm willing to provide you an opportunity to know, well, if something goes wrong, you know how to reverse opioid overdose, or just resources like that.
Harm
Well,
reduction.
my hope for the future is that you all are reminded of how beautiful and brilliant and divine, and that you remember that you are a divine representation of everything that is perfect in the universe, and that our people continue to grow, but not grow apart, that we grow together, and that we continue to become more united, and that things like substance use and substances do not tear us apart. I want to thank each of you again for taking your time today to be vulnerable and honest, to talk about the meaning behind our people, our purpose. So, thank you again so much. And thank you to our guests for joining us.